right.
And next up, the Excel topic of the week. Over to you, Sylvia.
All right. So, Chris, you are the Excel guy in your office. So we want to talk about Excel in the workplace because it's often not, exactly embraced by IT. And what I mean by that is the kind of higher end stuff that you're doing, the macros and so on. So we want to talk to you about how Excel gurus like yourself balance these things. How do you balance the complex needs that business has with, kind of what IT is already doing, and how do you form those strategic alliances with IT, or do you not? Do you have those battles that I had way too many of before I realized it was stupid?
Well, at least in my experience, IT doesn't really know much about Excel. They're kind of in their own world, so kind of trying to bridge that gap isn't worth the time and effort. I will say that when you're designing VBA stuff, especially in the workplace, I found it's very helpful to bring as much as you can out into the spreadsheet and away from the code behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So I'll do a lot of stuff with, like, let's say I'm exporting 5 different tabs from a worksheet. Mm-hmm. I'll put a table in a spreadsheet and have that person name all the worksheet names that they want to export. And that way, going forward, if a new worksheet comes up that they need to include, all they have to do is go into that table and type that new worksheet name. So that's kind of been a progression for me. I used to kind of do everything behind the scenes, like list out all the worksheet names, and I think really bringing that user interface out to the spreadsheet, mm-hmm. Especially when you're dealing with people that don't know anything about computer programming or VBA, really helps them kind of get accustomed to what's going on.
Right. So you reel them in slowly is what you're saying.
Baby steps.
Right.
But I would like to say that my progression was exactly that way, that everything was just straight code and user forms, and now everything to the extent possible is on the spreadsheet. And it does, I think it makes a difference. I mean, there's like there's some exceptions to it, but the more you could do on the spreadsheet, the less IT even gets upset because you have less code, among other reasons.
Until your stuff starts conflicting with things that they're already doing, and then you get into those little alpha battles, right? So for me personally, I don't know, Chris, how you feel about this. I found it's better to try to make friends with IT than because there's definitely this rift between the Excel people and the IT people, and it's just easier if you can work to bring those worlds together. I don't know if you, like me, believe that this is in the making because of Power BI and Power Pivot and stuff like that. I hope so. It's time.
Yeah, I mean my situation's probably different from what yours is. So with my IT department, I'm really good friends with them because they saved my butt on more than one occasion.
And they might be watching.
But they more handle like our cloud tools. So if we have data warehouses, so I work a lot with them to get these databases pulling in the correct information, which then spits that data into Excel, and then I take it from there. So the way kind of ours is set up is IT kind of has their programs that they're the experts at, and then us as financial analysts, we kind of take the Excel and go do our thing.
Right. I should clarify, I love IT now. I didn't always, but it's not that I'm at odds with them. I learned that lesson long ago. But no, that's great. That's fantastic. Right. So so how do you provide, so these people that you're sharing, as Excel people, we share our work across the organization a lot. So how do you have time, or I don't know, maybe you don't. Do you do training materials? Is it all, do you put everything on your blog, and that way you can point people at the workplace to that, or how do you train people on how to use your stuff?
I mean, it kind of depends based on how accustomed they are to change in Excel. So definitely having people go to those classes that I was putting on and being able to walk them through and get them some hands-on experience just with certain situations helped. And also just kind of walking through VBA. I mean, VBA code is very intuitive, so you can, once you kind of get the hang of it, you can read it like you're reading sentences, and it kind of makes sense once you understand the different levels. So getting people accustomed to that really helps. I'm a big fan and advocate of putting instructions right into the spreadsheet. So I even have a macro, a personal macro that sets up like a little text box all formatted nicely with instructions as the header and some bullet points, and I'll just click that, throw that on a spreadsheet, and start typing away. And screenshots help too. But I mean, when I'm doing these advanced things, I try to make it as user friendly as possible, and I try to just have buttons where you click. So I can go to someone and say, all you gotta do is click this button and it works. And if you have a good enough level of understanding of VBA, you can code in a way where it's dynamic, and you can give someone a spreadsheet and just tell them to click a button, and it automatically does that manual work for them. So that's kind of how I address it based on who I'm trying to train.
So in terms of training people, you know, because you're writing code, and let's say you have to pass that code along to them, you know, what are things within the code that you could do to help them out, or ways that, if let's say you need to look at it later on, that you can remember what you did?
Well, one of the main things I get the most feedback, positive feedback from with my website is I kind of put comments on after like every line of code. So I walk you through what every line's doing, and that really kind of puts that light bulb in people's heads, and they're like, oh, I didn't really understand it before, but now that you've kind of walked me through with all the comments, everything makes sense. I know exactly what it's doing. Whereas if you might see some code on a forum, most people just kind of are trying to get you quick answers, so they just kind of spit that code out and put it up to the forum, and people coming back later might not understand all that's going on. So it's nice to have those comments in there and try to comment as much as you can. And also, I mean, it helps me when I'm doing something that's maybe a one-off that I've never done before, and then 6 months later I'm coming back and I can look at that comment and be like, oh, that's what that did. So I remember I definitely wasn't commenting enough when I first started, and when I was coming back, I just found I was having to relearn all this stuff and figure out what this object was and what this action did. So comments are a lifesaver.
Tell you what, probably music to Jordan's ears on that, because he's all about, you know, program for future self. Kind of, not so much, Jordan. What are you thinking on that?
All right, I'm gonna piss
Jump
off.
in.
It's so controversial up in here. Okay, I think that we comment too much. I just think that I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't comment, and definitely the level of comments that Chris has on his blog is certainly appropriate. But man, I see people, they have this like old style of commenting where they just have this giant block, and it says who the author is and the date if they created it and what it's supposed to do, and like just like crazy amounts of information that nobody's going to read. I mean, I suppose perhaps it's for yourself later. I don't know, but I almost sometimes feel like we overemphasize commenting rather than coding in a way that's just more easy to read. You know, there's still people who are coding without indents. I mean, that I don't want to even bring those people up, but they don't use indents. They don't use white space. They, you know, they're just tempting me to say something. I mean, that's such an easy thing versus people, I've seen this, people struggle over comments, and I'm not saying, you know, I mean, commenting, it's not that big of a deal, just say what it does, but you know, they're like, oh, well, I really need to explain so someone can follow along. Well, that's only part of the story, so is formatting your code and just not writing ridiculously long lines and long complex codes.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great point. And if you look at my comments on the site, it's very, very simplistic. I'm not doing complete sentences and paragraphs like you were describing. Get to the point, say what the line does, and move on.
I think it's all about your audience. Some people want to have it all. They want you to write your story from the day you were born, you know, or maybe go back to the Big Bang. I mean, it just, and then there's other clients who are just like, you know, just get it done. I don't care. Show me the button I have to click. So maybe you know, I guess it depends on in a corporate environment or like where you are, Chris, you know, you kind of, you're working with the same people and stuff, and so you kind of know what they want. But as an Excel consultant, I can say that I've done very little commenting, and I've done, you know, I've written novels. I have some clients that like detail, so I think it depends.
Well, I'll say this. So, because back when I used to take over people's code, you know, well, you know, I guess I will do at my job. There's this like effect that's like where people write long. They start with like this long procedure, and it just goes on and on forever. And instead of breaking that up into sub procedures, saying, "Hey, let's do this," they just like comment these giant sections. So they're, you know, there's like a big comment block. This does this here. This does this here. Rather than separating it out, because I think that would make a lot more sense if you separated it out and just had one big procedure. Do this now, do this now, do this now. Ooh, I'm getting motivated about this. This is... But yes, so that's something that gets me, is these long... I mean, I'm going on forever, but I do hate procedures that go on forever as well, to be fair.